The second video on this channel. Today I'll be talking about this year's 2026 senatorial race in the state of Kentucky, which is my home state. I just want to get out of the way that I'm a registered independent. I consider myself a moderate. I normally vote about 50-50 depending on the person. This is why I think Democrats have just completely flubbed on Kentucky, except for the governor race in 2019 and 2023. And I think the only reason that happened was one, Matt Bevin insulted the teachers, and two, Andy Beshear had his dad's name and he won public office once in the state of Kentucky as Attorney General. And here's the reason why I say that Democrats could make Kentucky competitive. They choose not to, and they run awful candidates. Now, let me get into that. So, as a healthy reminder, we have a Democratic governor, surprisingly, in the state that went to Trump, and he won like 60% of the vote, if not more. This is the election I'm referencing. This is 2019. Very, very close race, less than a percentage point against the incumbent governor. Now, Andy Beshear is going to run for president. I don't care what he says. He's going to run for president in 2028. He's got my support if he does, but we'll see. And we'll see what the Republican field looks like. But as of right now, he's my front runner. So like I said, 2019, he flipped the governor's mansion. But, I mean, having a Democratic governor in Kentucky is not that abnormal. It's kind of like New Hampshire and Massachusetts. They vote really hard one way on the, presidential and Senate level, and they vote the other way on the governor level. But I want to say the reason why I think Democrats could win Kentucky, or at least make it competitive, but they keep running these two candidates that are awful. Do you see the difference? Like in Eastern Kentucky, especially, governor, Senate, against somebody nobody really likes in this state. And I will frankly say that although I voted for Joe Biden in this election, I voted for Mitch McConnell. I can't stand him at all, and I'm so glad he's retiring. But she seems so fake. At least I know what he was going to do. I know that sounds like a dumb thing to say, but that's just how I feel. And then 2022, Booker, who ran against her in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, even worse than her, against Rand Paul, which a lot of people in the state also do not like. Now, I did vote for Booker. I did vote for him in the primary in the general election. But you can't win Kentucky without making dents up here in the Cincinnati metro and eastern Kentucky, and down here like Owensboro and those areas, Christian County. But here's why Democrats could have absolutely made this Senate seat competitive. I know that Governor Beshear was not going to run in the Senate race because he's running for president. I mean, how are you going to, run a race and then turn around a couple months later and be like, oh, I'm running again? Who I think could have made this race slightly at least competitive is the former House minority, and if I'm not mistaken, majority leader, who's a Democrat from Eastern Kentucky, Rocky Adkins. This man not only represented Republican districts pretty much his whole time in the House that I know of. Yeah, I was right, majority leader. But he represented my home county of Lawrence County, his home county of Elliott County, which is deep eastern Kentucky. Lawrence County is deep red. And you can still tell people today that in eastern Kentucky that knew him and know him, that they love Rocky Adkins despite he's a Democrat. Here's a little bit more proof. Da-da-da-da. See how dark that eastern Kentucky side is with that color? But see the broad reach across the state? That, my friends, is Rocky Adkins. And I'm not saying that just because I volunteered on his campaign and helped in one of his campaign offices, but I'm telling you, if Democrats wanted this Senate race to be competitive, this is it. Now, maybe he's planning on running for governor because this Andy has been term limited, but you have to have a Democrat who is a moderate from eastern Kentucky to win this state. You can't win with two counties, which is Jefferson and Fayette, Louisville and Lexington. Because look, without those eastern Kentucky counties, even though he won heavily in Louisville, Lexington, you've got to win eastern Kentucky and here and here. Same thing in 2008. This is the Senate seat we are filling. A lot has changed since then, trust me, I know. But as you can see, This race was competitive. Why was it competitive? Eastern Kentucky was involved. So 2014, this is the same person. Yes, lost support, but you still see Eastern Kentucky counties involved in the mix. Above 40% again. Why? Eastern Kentucky involved. Also, this was the Lexington mayor, so he got a lot of vote out of there. But still, you can see this lighter color in Eastern Kentucky. Amy McGrath, who has the chance of winning this, did not win a single county in Eastern Kentucky. Charles Booker did not win a single county in Eastern Kentucky. The Democrats cannot write off states like Kentucky if they want to win them. They're never going to have a Senate majority again if they don't at least invest in these states. And you'll hear people say, well, Democrats invested money in 2020. It's not that they invested money, it's who they ran. Did Amy McGrath almost flip the House seat in 2018 that held Lexington? But then after the 2020 census, they completely gerrymandered that, so that's never going to happen again anyways. But what I'm saying is you can't run two washed up candidates who've already lost to both senators in our state and expect them to win. This is why, and excuse my language, we have senators in Kentucky that nobody likes and everybody thinks are pretty shitty. And this year we're going to have another Republican. He's my current Congress member. I voted for him actually like 3 times, but he's really made me mad lately. They have made this whole campaign on the Republican side about who's better to fight Trump. I mean, not fight, but who loves Trump more and who's better to Trump and who's their daddy. And like, listen, Kentucky voted for Trump, and a lot of people are saying, and what I also feel, it's the same thing we feel about all these Senate races we've had in the past. We don't care how much you love the president and worship him and whatever. We want to know what you're going to do for Kentucky because, frankly, most of the state has been forgotten about, if not the whole state, during Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell and our congressional members. The only congressional member right now that I can give hands to is James Comer, because he's the only one in the Republican leadership that really seems to have in the House that has the balls to go after these pedophiles, which a lot of people in our state care about. And the fact that the person who could win the senatorial nomination for the Republicans in Kentucky has endorsed the person in the Republican primary running against James Comer. That's made a lot of Kentuckians pissed off. So, I mean, there's a chance. We don't have to go too far back. You might be, oh, that's 2008, to 2023. Yes, there's been a shift. Democrats are doing better in the cities. If they got back out in the rural country, you could see Kentucky become a competitive state again, like it was in the 90s on the presidential level, and like it was on the senatorial level before the 2010s when Democrats gave up. So there was one person that could have won this that we knew about, and I think that was Rocky Adkins. You know, evident from this map, because I know Republicans to this day in Eastern Kentucky, and I currently live in Central Kentucky, and I know Republicans to this day who would run over mountains to vote for Rocky Adkins. But somehow we got 2 liberals from the cities, aka Lexington and Louisville, running to represent the whole state, when most of the vote comes from the rural counties. The reason why Eastern Kentucky's left the Democrats behind is because they didn't talk to them for about a decade or 2. The Republicans did, but the Republicans haven't delivered. So there is another base. Do not run a socialist, leftist, liberal, and they could win. It doesn't matter what the Republicans run, because Democrats run liberal people. If they're real liberal enough, as long as they got an R beside their name, they're going to vote for the Republican over the Democrat. And frankly, this election, I'm probably going to write in somebody. I don't want our senator to be a puppet, and I definitely don't want our senator to be somebody I can't really trust. I trust Booker a lot more than McGrath. It might sound like a rant, but Kentucky easily could go safe. It just really depends on how much Lexington and Louisville turn out this election. But Democrats have flubbed, just like they did in West Virginia. There's another Senate race we're going to talk about too. I'm heavily disappointed in Democrats in Appalachia because no party is helping Appalachia. So there's a window if they actually mean it. So Republicans are going to take this state once again. And frankly, they deserve it because the Democrats don't seem like they care.